Today on Wedding Worthy, we're celebrating Kaitlin and Kurt Strittmatter, a couple who met on a dating app but chose a wedding day that felt anything but modern. Their romantic celebration unfolded like a fairy tale, with misty air setting a dreamy tone and a venue that transported guests to the Italian countryside without ever leaving the States. From their heartfelt chapel ceremony to their classic getaway car, every moment was as timeless and charming as the couple themselves. Enjoy! Welcome to Wedding Worthy, where we celebrate incredible couples and the love stories that shape their perfect day.
Now we're the Taylors.
We're married! From heartfelt vows to breathtaking designs, every wedding detail reflects the journey that brought them together.
It was everything I could have ever imagined, and I was so happy with how everything had turned out.
So get ready to swoon as we take you inside the most extraordinary weddings and the love stories that make them wedding worthy. You're watching Wedding Worthy, where we believe every couple has a story.
I'm Kaitlin Strittmatter.
And I'm Kurt Strittmatter.
And we got married on October 7th of 2023.
So we met, not too romantically, but we met on the dating app Hinge.
Yep.
But I was living at Jersey Shore at the time, and Kate was in Central Jersey. And I picked her up on our first date, but as I was getting there, I was like, where am I? Like, I'm in the middle of nowhere. There's just woods.
We live in a very farmy town.
It's all farm town. So honestly, I didn't even know New Jersey had landscape like this until I met you.
Yep.
But I picked Kate up. We went to the Lone Eagle Brewery, and we just knocked it off from there, right? Like, we just had a couple beers, we were hanging out. So, mind you, where she lives, it's very, very rural. And I asked Kate, because we're getting pretty hungry. I was like, what's like a good restaurant in this town? Like, is there anything that's open that we can go to? And then she came up with the most fine establishment of Chili's.
I think I was very nervous. I was still like giddy and excited and anxious. So Chili's, for some reason, was the very first place that came to mind. And we have so many nice restaurants where my parents live. And we had a cheeseburger, I think, and
a queso burger,
a margarita, and it was great. And now Chili's is like an inside joke in our relationship because that was our first date spot. Very fancy. So I think that I started to really get feelings for Kurt, and I felt like he really stood out because back in college and prior, I was in a lot of intense relationships. Like, there always seemed to be a lot of just fighting to make it work, and it just took a lot of effort. So I had this vision of love, of being this just really intense, like both working at the same time to make it happen kind of a thing. And Kurt was the first time that love and just a relationship felt so easy. Kurt was so chill. He was like a relaxed little surfer boy. That's what I called him at first. And he kind of reimagined what a relationship could be like for me and what down the line love could look like for me. So I think I just really enjoyed how there was no games, there was no questions that I would like constantly be asking myself. Like, Kurt was so honest and so down to earth and chill the whole relationship, which then made me feel very much more at ease. And I think it just created a really special relationship between us.
Right off the bat, like, you were like a strong person in my corner. Like, I think it was only a couple of months into our relationship, I was doing the Keys 100, which is a 100-mile foot race from Key Largo to Key West. And I remember I asked Kate, I was like, do you want to come down and like help crew, like help with me like going throughout the race? And with no hesitation, she was like, absolutely, I want to be down there 100%. I was like, all right, she's a little crazy maybe from that, but I was like, no, but she's a strong person in my life. And then, but I don't think she realized though that you only met my parents a couple
This
was
was very
times
early
before
on,
that.
yes.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that I would be spending 31 hours in a car with them straight.
Yes.
Like, obviously crewing Kurt as he ran from Key Largo across the Keys to Key West. And it was a very interesting and very funny trip. Number one, because I obviously got to saw this man that I had only met a couple months prior do something so challenging and so inspiring for yourself. But I also got to kind of be like thrown right into the family, like no showering.
Yeah.
We had to use the restroom behind like random restaurants, like in the middle of the night in the dark in the Keys. And it was a very funny and just special time that we all got to bond together without Kurt. So I feel like that also stood out to me a lot in our relationship.
Yeah, you definitely formed like a really good relationship with my parents after that, for sure.
Yeah, that was a good one. I think that I knew that this would be something that I wanted forever, kind of going off of what I said before and Kurt making the relationship and this first experience of love feel so simple. I slowly realized that this was something that I just didn't want to live without anymore, and I wanted life to feel that simple, especially when I'm so very not simple. And I think that Kurt just put me so at ease no matter what we were going through at the life, whatever challenge it was, whatever new career endeavor that we had or new whatever it was, new adventure. Having Kurt just made me feel so calm and put me so at ease, and I just realized that would be something that I think I wanted to have forever in my corner.
I realized that Kate was something special, again, when it goes back to the Keys 100, just because I was going through so much, it's not trauma, but like hardship throughout that race.
Physical trauma. Kurt would train for this race at weird hours of
like
every
running
day.
30 miles every weekend.
Yeah, like one time he went from my house in Branchburg, New Jersey, all the way out to Lambertville, and he would just practice these like quick 50-mile races, which is so crazy to normal people, but so like just a training thing for you.
With running and that whole race, like she was just a huge part of that, a good motivator, always there for me. And just my little cheerleader in the corner, so I knew that was something special. So our proposal actually started in December, around the holidays. We were visiting family, and Kate was celebrating with your friend that just got recently engaged. So I was thinking, okay, this could be a good time to sit back and talk to Kate's parents to get their blessing.
I was like, why are you coming with me? I knew exactly what he was doing.
I figured you might have an idea. So I got Rombauer Chardonnay for Kate's mom because she loves Chardonnay. And I got, Johnny Walker for your dad because he loves Scotch. They're the most genuine, greatest people. Like, I'm so happy to call them mom and dad. Like, they're just amazing people in my life. And it was such a great time because we probably talked for like 3 hours about everything, just like the whole like marriage, getting like the excitement build up kind of thing.
I came home from that night out with my friends, and Kurt was hanging out with them eating pizza. They were like teary-eyed, and I was like, ooh, I definitely know what just happened.
Yeah.
But fast forward a couple months later, now we're in March, and
so we're going to Winter Park, Colorado. And it's a special place to me because growing up, my family and I would go skiing out there every winter. So this time, though, my parents were out there and your parents were out there. They have a great relationship, too.
Yeah, we're very blessed for that. We do a lot of vacations together.
They're so friendly with each other. It's
That's
awesome.
really special. Yeah. So that was a great time, too.
So they were all out there, and I knew that Kate would like having family for that big day as well. So
I'll interrupt though and say that we were there for 7 days. It was a whole week-long ski trip, and I knew that it was happening. I mean, I definitely packed some white just in case, but like my family would be there, Kurt's family or parents would be there, your parents would be there. We had already gone through like the ring design process. I knew it was most likely happening, but the only thing I didn't know was when during that trip. So every day I woke up and I was like, is it happening today? I wasn't sure. So every time we went to the mountain to go skiing, we would go up to the top of the big snow mountain. And I was like, oh my God, is it right now? And I'm going to have to like ski down, not a good skier. And I'm going to have to ski down this slope with like a ring on my finger. Or when we were in the gondola up and it was like a beautiful scene behind us, we're dangling off whatever that is. And I would be like, is it happening now? And like, what if I drop it and we can't find it after? I was so anxious this entire trip, but in Kurt fashion, he of course waited until the very last day. Probably to keep me on my toes. And by that time, I was so anxious and nervous that I felt so sick that morning.
So it was the last day of the trip. I asked Kate if she wanted to go for a walk or a hike. And you originally said no. I
was so nervous. And my mom, I now look back and I realize my brother was coming to surprise us, and so was yours.
Yes. So
and they were arriving right as we were leaving for our walk. So my mom was like, get your butt out the door, like go on that walk. And I now realize why, but I was so nervous.
Yeah, so we eventually went on this walk. And it's a short little walk. It goes to a pond, and it's obviously the winter time, so it's frozen during the season. And it has a little platform like dock, if you will. And
Yeah, it's
so
pretty.
I walked Kate out to there, and it's such a beautiful area because then you see like the whole resort of Winter Park, all the mountains in Colorado. So it was the perfect spot to do it. But there's nothing in the area where I could distract Kate into like, making her away from looking at me. So I think I said like, oh, look at the moose tracks in the snow down there, which there were none. So, but you looked anyway.
Yes.
And then,
so you did your thing.
as soon as she turned, I got down on one knee, had the ring in hand, and then popped the question. And then, of course, you said yes.
Yes, and then we went back, and our parents had decorated the whole condo with like just engaged stuff. My brother was there, your brother was there. That was such a surreal night, just like realizing we were finally engaged, and then FaceTiming all of our friends. It was beautiful. And I would love to add that our brothers came and surprised us, literally a big trip across the country just for one night, which was a big deal too. That was
left, like,
very,
the next
very
day
special.
on Saturday.
We all, yeah. Mm-hmm. So our proposal was great.
Yeah.
So I am from Branchburg, New Jersey, which is that small little farm town in central New Jersey. And I create soulful and artful brand identities and custom websites for my small business, Aurora Designed. I feel like art and storytelling is something that is really important to me, and I try to infuse that into all areas of my life, whether that's our first home together. We live in an 1800s stone cottage. I do that in our marriage. I do that in my own fashion, in my own life, and then I especially did that in our wedding. So storytelling is something that is really important to me. Introducing Kurt to my family was absolute perfection. Just to give you an example of how my family feels about Kurt, it was Kurt's most recent birthday dinner on around March 3rd. And we went out and we did our usual tradition that I started, where we all go around the table and we say something that we love about that person. And for some reason this year, my parents and my brother and my brother's girlfriend all went around, and I kid you not, every single person had a tear in their eye when they were saying his. And just hearing my family talk about him like that was something that was so special. In my mom's speech at my bridal shower, she said that if she had to go out into the world and find the perfect person for me, she would find Kurt. And and that's another just example of how they feel about him. He fit in so perfectly. He was the chill to my so not chill, and he was the older brother that my brother never had. He was the extra son that my parents got. We have a really special bond that I'm forever grateful for.
So I grew up in Wyckoff, New Jersey, and then I moved to Red Bank, New Jersey, like throughout the college years. And I'm pretty similar with Kate as far as owning a business, but a lot different that I'm a business loan broker. So
yeah,
not the
creative
or artistic approach at all. Mm-hmm. I would like to say that I'm a simple person. I'm very a homebody. So I love being home, spending time with Kate, and doing the lawn, and just watching sports in the garage at the bar that I built.
Kurt once told me that he knew he would make it in life when we owned our first home together, and he was out mowing the lawn on his property. And that just goes to show how simple of a man Kurt is, which is such a beautiful thing.
Well,
but that explains you perfectly.
There's nothing better than taking care of your lawn in the summer with the sun out. Like it's the American dream.
Yep.
So introducing Kate to my family was very seamless. My parents, just like me, are pretty chill and relaxed.
Super chill.
Yeah, and then Kate has this bubbly, energetic personality, which seemed to mesh and fit really well with
it's funny.
my family.
A very funny dynamic.
But our first apartment was right down the street from my parents, so we got to see them pretty often, whether it was going to the beach, going out to lunch, dinner, working out in the basement on their Peloton.
We mooched off their Peloton.
Just a little bit.
Big time.
So we saw them pretty often, so we formed a really good relationship with them from the get-go. And then also, Kate is the oldest sibling in her family.
And the oldest grandchild.
So the oldest. And then when she entered my family, she's the youngest in the family. So it was really cool to see her like switch roles between whichever family we're hanging out with.
Yeah,
it's
like the
older,
in-charge big
the
sister,
younger,
and then like the little sister. Because he has 3 siblings, and they are all married. Some of them have kids, so it's a very big family. And I all of a sudden got to play the little sister role, which is really cool.
Yep.
It's like a big party when we're all together. They're the absolute best, and they live all over the East Coast, and they're great. As far as situations that have made us closer or helped us grow stronger, one that definitely comes to mind, or I'll start by saying that we don't really have fights in our relationship besides like little things, like loading the dishwasher or something, but we both kind of walked into this wanting the same exact things and willing to put in the work to make everything happen the way we wanted it to. So outside of that, situationally, I think the one really challenging chapter was a couple of years into our relationship, and Kurt was at a crossroads in terms of career path. Before, when I met him, he was
an ABA therapist.
So he worked with students with special needs, which it takes a very special person to do that well, and you were immaculate at it, but I think you just felt a little stuck and you had to make a big decision.
Like I loved what I did with the ABA therapy, but I feel like there was no growth in it, so I feel like I had to like do like kind of like a career change, like a different path.
So Kurt's brother, who does what he does, gave him the opportunity to move down south to North Carolina for at least half a year to learn the business, and hence that's why Kurt now has his own business doing the same thing. But we had to make a decision together as a couple to do that move together. And as someone who is very, very close with their family, like I don't go a couple hours without calling my mom just to like see what she's up to. That was a very, very difficult decision from my end. And at the same time, we were also in the process of buying our first home. We were actually under contract for a very gorgeous house on the Delaware River, and we had just lost it due to some like inspection issues. So the concept of, number one, moving away from my family, and number two, I felt like I was giving up a really big dream that I wanted to have this first house. So navigating that, like while also being super supportive of Kurt and being excited for Kurt, was really difficult. But obviously once we moved down there and once we kind of like just figured out how to make it all work, getting my parents down there to see us and just getting used to it, I think it turned into a beautiful experience for sure, obviously.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Like it was the difficult decision to like kind of uproot our lives up in New Jersey and then go down there to, you know, get that new opportunity. But now looking back at it though, we have some great memories down there. So it all worked out in the end.
We got to be super close with Kurt's siblings, which we didn't get to see very often.
That's true, yeah.
We experienced a new place together. So it was a wonderful memory and a wonderful experience, but just being able or learning how to support each other through something like that and like learning what the other one needed at the time, whether it was support of Kurt or supporting me, kind of figuring out how I was feeling. That was definitely a learning experience for us, and I think we use all those tools now in like regular life challenges as well.
Yep, absolutely.
So the events leading up to our wedding start with our engagement party that took place in my parents' backyard in their little farm town. We have had quite a few birthday parties back there, graduation parties back there. We had a mechanical bull there once. We have lots of parties in their backyard. They have a lot of grassy property, and then it overlooks a creek, so it's a lot of fun. So this engagement party was garden themed, and we had a big tent, and it was the first time I was really able to bring artistic details into wedding events. So I made a whole welcome sign. I had a whole welcome backdrop. We had the stained picnic tables. I was very specific about what picnic tables I wanted and what color brown. So
so we got these picnic tables from Lowe's. They were not stained or painted, and for some reason there was like a crazy heat wave in May while we were staining these, and it was 95 degrees. That must have had to be.
I put them to work.
But my dad and your dad and me, we were like so burnt, but it was well worth it.
It looked amazing. So that whole party was really special and a whole lot of fun. And then after that, skipping ahead, I think I had my bachelorette party next.
Yep, that was nice.
And it took place in Palm Springs, California. And the theme that I came up with was wanted, wild, and soon to be wed. So it was a very vintage pinup girl Western kind of feel, which are my favorite like vibes ever. So we went out to Palm Springs for a long weekend. We had a vintage slumber party one night in like vintage nightgowns. We had a private chef come. We had a pottery class in Joshua Tree, which was such a cool way to kind of bring in my art factor. And overall, it was the best bachelorette I could have ever asked for. And also because Kurt and my friends planned a few surprises along the way. Like you had this game made up, and I would have to guess the responses that my soon-to-be husband said. So that was a really fun surprise. And He also brought drinks, or like he had ordered drinks for us at certain restaurants,
Yeah.
and then they would have notes like from your fiance. So it was really cute and very sweet. And I think next was your bachelor party.
It probably was, yeah. So similar to Kate, I did a destination bachelor party as well. But we went to Key West, Florida.
Back to Key West.
Yeah, back
Can't
to Key
get
West.
enough
Yeah,
of it.
that's right. This time I didn't run there, though. We actually flew there, so that was the exciting part. But it was 5 of my close friends, and so we were down there for a long weekend. It was like 3 days, and I just wanted to do an excursion and like a fine dining experience with the guys. So we ended up doing a deep sea fishing charter on the first day, and it was an absolute blast, like catching mahi-mahi, and then we were able to bring it back and bring it to the local restaurant to eat, and it was just
See,
so
simple
good.
man.
Simple man, yeah.
Simple.
And then the next night we did like an Italian steakhouse kind of thing. So it was just like bring that like, you know, the fine dining experience.
There you go.
know?
Not Chili's.
And then, then we just like, bounced around Key West. So
They were fun.
Yeah,
that
it
was
was
a good
awesome.
time.
It was a
Pictures
great time.
were fun. Then I think we had my bridal shower. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
The bridal shower was drama. So it was 2 or 3 weeks after my bachelorette, so all these events were pretty close to each other in 1 month. Again, I had everything planned to the nines. I had the theme of something blue, and I had designed everything. It was all done. The venue was done. It was a couple blocks away from our cottage house, our new home here. And I think the day that I left for my bachelorette, I had found out that the venue was no longer a working venue. So I was quite literally on my plane ride or my flight to Palm Springs. I bought the Wi-Fi. My mom and I are texting back and forth trying to figure out a new venue that was for something that was 2 weeks away. So we were scrambling. It was also in the middle of wedding season in the spring, so there was like nothing available, especially nothing close by that had the like vintage cottagey kind of vibe I really wanted. So when we got back, I ended up finding this very empty old barn that was on the Delaware River along near Frenchtown, and it was perfect, although it quite literally was a barn. There were bats living in the attic. There were bat droppings all over the ground, and it was like a bare open space. We had to bring everything in. So I rallied my troops, my village, and we cleaned the whole place that morning, scooping up, catching bats and releasing them outside. We had to rent all new like tables and chairs. We had to add lights and Edison lights to the ceiling. But with all that being said, it turned out to be, besides our wedding night, I feel like my most favorite wedding event and one of my most favorite nights of my life. Obviously because all the closest women in my life were there to support me, which was the first time I got to experience that. That was so surreal. But also because I got to, again, infuse so much artistry into it with the games that we played, the signs that I made. I custom painted a banner. I also got to work with a local florist on these really cool arrangements, and I now work with her all the time for other like home arrangements and such. And the best part, or the last best part, is that Kurt was also in the process of building a bar in our garage for the purpose of having a bridal shower after party there. So after the party was over, we all came back to our house, which was amazing because we had just purchased this home a couple months prior and hadn't had everyone over yet. So I think there was a moment where you and I like stood back. It was in the wee hours of the morning. We were standing back. We saw all of the cars parked on our lawn and all the people in our garage. And it was like one of those moments where we were like, wow, this is our house. Like everyone's here.
It was like those moments, like a pinch me moment kind of thing. Just see like all our friends and family just having a blast at our house.
Yeah,
it was fun.
One of the best nights.
That was fun. Yeah, because we're grilling out, hanging out in the bar area, listening to music.
Yeah. And then the rest of our wedding events were obviously during our wedding weekend. So we definitely had a wedding weekend. Mm-hmm. We start with our wedding welcome party that took place the Thursday of our whole extravagant affair. And it took place at a local Italian bistro near my parents' house, one of our favorite restaurants. It's like a restaurant you would find on the side cobblestone streets of Italy. It was so darling and charming. So this weekend was the theme was Italian countryside, because I feel like that kind of represented our love story the most. So this night kind of introduced the whole Italian flair. I wore a red and white polka dot dress from Realization Par. I had little red flowers in my hair. You wore a red and white striped shirt.
Yep.
We
Yeah.
had red and white checkerboard tablecloths on all the tables that the restaurant now uses all the time because they liked it so much. So that was cool.
Well, we had the projector,
We had the
like playing like an
projector.
old Italian movie.
On the wall. We had
had
a singer that
the-
was serenading us.
The cheese thing? I don't know what you call that.
The
But
owners
it's-
and the sons, they obviously were the ones cooking the food, but they did it in front of everybody and had pasta and cheese wheel.
That's
We
it,
had
yeah.
pizzas. We had the basil in brown paper bags and tomatoes and custom napkins as centerpieces. The whole thing was the perfect start to our wedding celebration. And then the next day was our rehearsal and rehearsal dinner. Because we were staying at our venue for 2 nights, the next morning we got all of our stuff ready and then went straight to the venue, which is where all that was taking place. And this night was more of the countryside kind of theme. So for the rehearsal dinner, it took place at Hudson City Winery, which is a beautiful winery in upstate New York. And my vision for this was just having one beautiful long table, like intimate dinner party kind of vibes. And we had candlelight everywhere. The centerpiece was crushed tile.
From our guy.
Our tile guy, and we crushed it ourselves. So I really wanted it to feel very earthy, organic, like vintage-esque. And then on top of that, we had more candles, bud vases with little white flowers, and then I had everyone's name embroidered on, or hand embroidered on textured napkins. So that was their place card, and they could take that home. And then I also custom designed very vintage-esque old world menus that were printed on textured fabric, which was also really cool. And then last but not least, I wore a vintage reworked dress and my mom's wedding veil that she wore on her wedding day. And then I also was wearing earrings that we created out of my grandmother's wedding dress. So everything had so much sentimental value to it and was very intentional, and that was another really fun wedding event.
Yeah, and it was just really cool to see like both of our bridal parties just meshing together in the one long table, like conversing with each other.
Yeah.
Like, cause that was like the first time where like my best friends really met your best friends. So it was really cool to see that.
Yeah.
We got married on October 7th, 2023 at the Rushmore Estate in upstate New York.
So I would say I was the mastermind behind our wedding planning. Obviously, as an artist, everything art and design related was very, very important to me. So I had a very strong vision in terms of what I wanted our wedding to look like. I also worked with a planner, Bethany by Modern Kicks. She was the mastermind behind kind of bringing my ideas to actual fruition. Like, she did all the correspondence with the vendors, kind of brought some ideas to life. So she was a huge integral part of planning as well. But in terms of aesthetics, like I said, I wanted our wedding theme to be Italian countryside. So obviously that was very involved with the wedding. But besides that, I also wanted it to feel really intentional to us and very, very sentimental. And the way that I did that was by incorporating a ton of vintage elements to our wedding. So the reason I thought that would be a good idea is because, to me, vintage, just like in my wardrobe, in our home, etc., it's all collected stories. Like, it's items or things that have been passed down from generation to generation. They have so many love stories woven into them. Like, they just have so much character, and I feel like that kind of speaks for our relationship, or how we want our relationship to feel down the line when we have kids and they pass our love down to their kids. So that was kind of another element to our wedding that I wanted to incorporate. So a few examples are, I curated a whole vintage robe collection for my bridesmaids the morning of the wedding. That was really stunning and really dreamy. Our wedding flat lay that is usually just a collection of your wedding stationery or like your perfume or cufflinks or anything like that, I turned into something more, and I basically included all of the mementos or pieces of mementos from our love story, our parents' love story, our grandparents' love story. So all the ones that had to happen for us to happen. So I had a lot of vintage pieces in that photography set. We used my grandparents' wedding cake topper on our wedding cake. I used vintage postcards that were from Italy, which makes sense because we honeymooned there as well. I used that for escort card things. So like, that's what people would pick up and it would lead them to their table. I used vintage recipe cards that I tied onto all the menus. There were so many vintage things that I tied into the wedding that made it feel really special, I would say.
No, a lot, yeah.
Something else that was really, really important to me was partnering with as many artistic vendors as I possibly could. I definitely could have DIY'd, or I mean, not DIY'd, I do this for a living, so I definitely could have done certain design elements myself, but I, for once, wanted to be on the receiving end of the creative process, and I wanted the opportunity to partner with like-minded individuals that could kind of incorporate their own artistry and talent into our wedding day. So our stationery artist was a really, really big part of that. I had a really beautiful vision for what I wanted our save the dates to be, our invitation suite, the banner that hung on the front that invited everyone into our reception space. So our save the dates were almost like someone scribbled on a napkin sitting on the side of a cafe in Italy, like a drawing what they saw in front of them, and then had a little handwritten note on the bottom. And that's exactly what she brought to life. So our wedding save the date is one of my favorite pieces of our whole wedding. The invitation suite was more of a whimsical, colorful Italian experience. She did the custom banner. And then the last piece that I wanted to mention was our wedding menu booklets. They were so cool. I didn't just want a menu on the table. I wanted something that people could take home and kind of have as like a special wedding memento. So it was a multi-page booklet that had a beautiful stamp-like illustration on the front. Then on the inside, it had a handwritten welcome note from us, kind of welcoming everyone to the most important table that we would ever have. And then it had the menu, and then it was all tied together with twine, a die-cut pomegranate with everyone's name on it that matched the overflowing fruit that was on the table. And then, like I said, the sourced recipe card that people could take home and cook with if they wanted to. So stationery and all the design elements were my absolute dream come true. For work, like I said, I create brands and websites for other creatives. And somewhere along the way, that turned into me niching down very much into the wedding photographer world. So I literally work with wedding photos all day, every day, and I have really grown to fall in love with certain styles, certain stories that they're able to tell. I think wedding photography is something that can be it's an absolute dream to me. And I had a very specific vision for how I wanted ours to look like. And I worked with the most wonderful man on the planet. His name is Carlos with Noose Photography, and he essentially has a very documentary, cinematic, yet timeless style that I really wanted to incorporate into our wedding. So a lot of it was like fly on the wall kind of things. We did some posing, but more so it was like those little moments. I'm trying to think, like when we first got down the stairs, or the way that my necktie kind of like moved and blew in the breeze. He caught all of these really special moments that I would have forgotten about if I didn't necessarily hire him. So having something that felt like it was taken out of a vintage movie is kind of what my photography goal was, and he executed that perfectly. I will still go through our wedding photos and just like cry at them because I think they're so pretty.
Shout out to Carlos.
Shout out, yeah, he was great. Yeah. He was so funny. So our guest experience, like I said, I wanted them to feel like they were entering into an Italian countryside soiree. So obviously we got married a couple hours prior at a really cute white chapel. So guests had time to either get dressed in their evening attire or just have time to kind of do their thing in between the actual getting married portion and then the cocktail hour portion. So us and our closest family were already at the venue, and then everyone started arriving. They entered into the venue space through these beautifully adorned pillars that kind of allowed them to enter into a library space as well as a terrace area, which is where cocktail hour took place. We had someone out there serving them champagne on silver trays that they could... Roller. Not there yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Skipping ahead. They had silver trays with champagne on them that they walked into. The flowers were growing and decorated over all the pillars. I wanted it to look like the florals were literally growing on whatever they were situated on. Like I wanted it to feel like they were overflowing and just decorating the beautiful architecture that the Rushmore estate already had. So they go in there, they pass the banner that I mentioned before that also welcomes them into a beautiful night ahead. And they could either go into the library space or up on the terrace by the tent or on like the little balcony section. So in the library, we had a beautiful arrangement of cocktail hour food and the bar. And then out on the terrace area, like the balcony, if you will, we had a string quartet, or no, we had a violinist and a singer.
Yes. Yeah.
The fireplace was lit, so that was a beautiful moment up there. That's also where we had our escort card table, which showed a beautiful, one of my favorite arrangements of the whole day, I think. But this overgrowing floral arrangement, and then we also had these vintage Florentine trays that held vintage postcards, like I mentioned, that they would then take with them, and then that would lead them to their seats inside. And then continuing cocktail hour, we had a tent in the back, and you could say the
tent in the back, and then we had the cigar roller. That was my touch to it.
Yeah, that was what Kurt wanted. The
hand-rolled cigars for the guests.
And we had the
seafood bar out there.
The seafood bar and everything, so that was kind of outside. And then once cocktail hour was over, they were welcomed into the reception room. So they went inside. We had a few really long, big tables that we actually used painter's drop cloth for. That was a way that we kind of just like...
And just to confirm, we didn't stain these tables either.
No, we didn't stain them. They were there. So they were welcomed to their seats, which obviously had, like I said, the menu booklets that showed them what their place setting was. We had patterned napkins, different patterned china. So everything was a very like collected, artful, Italian-esque countryside kind of flair that really brought them into this imagined dream space. And then in front of them on the table, we had the overgrowing florals, and then fruit was also styled around all the florals, like kind of just cascading over the table. Like you went to the farmer's market in Italy and just dropped your basket off and all the fruit was just there. And then the other decor that kind of brought them into this space was up the stairs. We actually sat on a balcony for our little sweetheart table, which was cool because we got to overlook the whole reception space, and the greenery was growing over that as well. Everything was very attention to detail and like artistically story filled. I would say that kind of made them feel like they were in this beautiful space for the night. Dress shopping, my absolute dream come true. So I actually received the best piece of bridal advice from one of my wedding dress stylists. She said, there are so many wedding dresses you could pick from. All brides will know this. There's different styles, different silhouettes, different textures. It's actually very overwhelming to go wedding dress shopping, but she said that you need to figure out the type of bride you want to be on your wedding day, whether that's more romantic, whether that's like more sexy, or just figure out the style you kind of want to embody and what version of you want to most emulate on your wedding day. And that helped me narrow it down like this. I realized that I wanted to feel like a poetic, romantic, artistic fairy on my wedding day, because I feel like that's my personality that is most me, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what I went into the rest of wedding dress shopping envisioning, like what dress was going to make me feel like that. So I knew right away that Danielle Frankel, who her designs are immaculate, I knew I needed to have a dress from her. Mostly because her gowns are actual works of art in themselves. Like they can be on a hanger and they could look like a piece of art. They're stunning. The way that the structure of the dress looks, the movement of the dress, the patterns, the textures, it's magical. So I ended up picking the Annalise dress, which featured a strapless bodice, all lace. And then the bottom almost had like a Baroque style hip line where it kind of came up and then cascaded down. It had little lace cutouts that were kind of like cascading imperfectly around the bottom waist as well, almost like they were just like kind of placed there in a messy, poetic way. And then the bottom wasn't transparent, but it had like a see-through kind of look to it, which looked so beautiful in certain sunlights and everything. And then finally, the bottom didn't just go to the floor. It had, I think it's called a horsehair bottom hemline, but it basically had like a dancing hemline that allowed the dress to have a lot of movement. It rained a lot on our wedding day, which is now something I can't picture our wedding day without. It added so much poetic like mystery in the air, and I would hold it up a lot. And even just how it looked being held up was magical. It was so stunning. And then finally, I had a matching lace necktie choker that went around my neck and then flew down my back. And in the breeze, it would like blow in the wind. It was my favorite piece, and I wear it all the time in my normal wardrobe now, which is really special.
So similar to Kate's experience, I went and rented a tuxedo from Tessuto. It was a two-tone tux, so it was all black. And black shoes, and I had a vest and
He doesn't even remember
a bow
what
tie.
he wore.
Yeah. and I had a bow tie. But the real kicker, though, was if I didn't return it the next day, I think it was like a $50 surcharge or something like that. So the day after our wedding, I made sure to get that done. I'll start by saying that Kate kind of took the reins on doing most of the wedding planning, as you can tell. She has such a great vision. She has a creative eye for it. So it was really special to see her formulate this vision in our love story and in our wedding. So I really had no complaints. Like, I loved everything that you did.
Yeah, every time I showed you something, you were like, I love that. I don't have any changes. I was like, great.
Yeah, but there was one thing that I was very stern on, and that was to not do a first look, and which I'm so happy that we did.
That took some convincing on my end. Kurt literally had no things to say throughout the whole planning process until this one portion. I was like, wait, but I think I may want to do a first look because I've seen so many other people do it. And Kurt was adamant about not doing it.
Yeah, no, because it was great to see Kate for the first time when she was walking down the aisle. Like, she just looked so beautiful. She was glowing with the big white dress and like a smile from like ear to ear. So like it was great because that was, for me, that was a genuine reaction from me. And it's cool because Carlos took the photo of me, like that's my real reaction. Mm-hmm. So that was, I'm so glad we did that again. But
it's cool from your vantage point
and
too.
my vantage point. Yeah, that's my vantage point. Because I was like at the front of the church and I was looking out at everyone. And it was really cool to see everyone just like turn and look at Kate, like in pure enjoyment, just walking down the aisle to my wife to be. Like, it was just a surreal moment.
I totally agree, and I'm so happy that Kurt was so like stern about that decision or that desire, because nothing wrong with first looks. I think they're great. They make a lot of sense for timelines sometimes, especially if you have to get your photos in. They make a lot of sense if you want to do your vows in private. There's a lot of reasons to do a first look, and I was kind of on board with doing it. But the feeling that I had right before the ceremony when I was in the getaway car by myself, my dad had walked my mom in, the driver was out, Kurt was obviously already in the chapel, probably at the front waiting for me, and I had like 5 minutes in the car alone where I realized like, oh my gosh, I'm about to get married, I'm not going to be a fiance anymore, and I'm going to see my future husband, like my husband essentially, in a minute. And that feeling that I had of feeling so anxious and giddy is not a feeling I may have had the same way, at least in the same capacity, if we had seen each other already. Like, before the doors opened, when my dad gave me that last kiss on the cheek and like seeing Kurt for the first time, I think I'm like still shaking now. It was a surreal feeling that I don't think it wouldn't be replicated if we had.
I don't think so either if we did the first
So
look.
I'm glad that Kurt stood his ground, as you should.
Absolutely.
Our getaway car leaving the chapel is one of my top 2 favorite moments of the entire wedding day. Number one, because it was a 30-minute drive back to the reception space, so we got to experience the first 30 minutes of being married alone without like your family and everyone starting to celebrate right away. We got to just be the two of us.
Yeah, and just like take it in.
Yeah,
like, for that 30-minute ride.
That was special in its own way. But number 2, because I had this very strong vision ever since I was a little girl, seeing it in the movies, of being in like the really fluffy white dress squished into the back of a tiny little getaway car with my husband. And that's exactly what it was like. Like, that's one of those things that completely lives up to your expectations. We had a vintage Saab white getaway car. It was the most cute little Italian car. We had the just married on the back with the cans. It was still misting outside, so that was romantic. And I had the big fluffy white dress squished in the back with you. And I think we were like taking digital camera photos of the two of us, like husband and wife. And then one of the coolest parts about it, though, was that our driver, Bruce, he is a gem. We were driving up and down the mountain through the curves because it is so windy over there. And he's like randomly in the middle of the drive, he was like, just so you know, like like is going to be like climbing a mountain. It's going to be really challenging at times, but it'll always be so worth it when you get to the top. And the two of us like cry. I think that was such a surreal moment too, where he said the most perfect words when we so like needed to hear something like that. It was special.
Absolutely, yeah.
So our reception space was basically the long tables, and then we had a dance floor that was right by this beautiful stone fireplace. Mm-hmm. We had it was called Owls and Lions, and we actually found them from another friend. They played at their wedding, and I think before we even got engaged.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
We were like, we need them. We need them ASAP for whenever we do get married, because they were incredible, and they were amazing. So we had a whole band portion for most of the night. Everyone was out on the dance floor. We were like squished all together. It was a total blast. And then we had a after party that kind of still took place in the same exact area and just switched to a DJ, and we played a lot of 90s grunge music.
A lot of 90s grunge, a lot of like Blink-182, Sum 41, you know, like I guess early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah, like punk rock. Yeah, so that portion of the night actually ended up being one of my favorite memories of the night, because it was the song Ocean Avenue by Yellowcard, and Kate was dancing up on the balcony where we had our meal. And she was just dancing, looking like too much fun, and I was like, I gotta be up there with her. It looks amazing. So then, I'm so glad I went up there and joined her, because it was just all of our family and friends were still on the dance floor.
It's like a concert.
It was literally they were like applauding to us, and just
everyone
so happy.
was down there like cheering. It was a cool moment. Yeah.
I think it was the last song of the night, actually.
It might have been one of the last songs, and I just remember there's a video of it. It's one of my favorite videos of the whole night too. But we are so in it, and it was great. So our planner, Bethany, ensured that truly nothing went wrong on our wedding day. I don't have a single thing on our wedding day that I would have changed, that I wish happened differently. Even the rain normally people don't want there to be rain on our wedding day. And obviously if it's downpouring, that's a totally different story. Yeah. I think that would have definitely put a little bit of a damper on my memory of it. But it was misting out and lightly drizzling, and it added such a romance, almost like in those fairy tale movies where there's like a fog or a mist or something like that. It's the fairy vibes coming through. But I thought it was so romantic. And even just the getaway car portion, or like the umbrellas that we used in the beginning when my parents and I left for the chapel in the getaway car. There's one photo of my dad holding the umbrellas over for me to get into the car, and even that I find to be so romantic and just added a little sense of magic into the whole time. But other than that, I don't know if there was anything that turned out being.
I don't think so. I think it was such a great day. It was such a special day that I can't think of anything off the top of my head either.
One thing that did go wrong were that the warm water was broken at the venue. So we both took the coldest showers of our entire lives the morning of our wedding. So I don't find that to be fun though. So
no, that wasn't. You're right. That wasn't a good memory. No.
So we literally brought our Italian countryside wedding theme to life through our honeymoon by going to both Italy and Ireland.
Yeah. So we started in Ireland, we flew into Dublin, and then we went to Galway, Killarney, Dingle, and then back to Dublin. And
then we flew to Rome and did...
What did we do?
Rome, Tuscany, the Tuscan countryside, the Tuscan coastline. Yeah. It was amazing. We did go for a very long time. We went for almost 3 weeks. No, we went to 3 weeks. We went for 3 weeks, and we actually did end up cutting it short too. We were going to stay or go back to Rome and do Florence, but we changed things around. It ended up coming home, but it was one of the most special trips ever. Yeah. And a fun fact is that kind of thinking ahead for our thank you cards, we, instead of just writing our thank you cards out for our wedding, obviously our gracious wedding gifts, we had this great idea of collecting postcards throughout our entire honeymoon, and we brought them home and we mailed them to everybody as our thank you cards from Rome, Dingle, all the
cities
places.
That we went to, all the small towns.
Yeah, that was really fun.
Yeah. We are most looking forward to having kids.
My parents are gonna watch us right now and be like, "Is it happening right now?"
I'm so excited to become a father, but more importantly, I'm so excited for Kate to become the motherly figure that I know she is destined to be. So I can't wait for when that opportunity comes and to.
Not right now. Definitely in the future.
Yes, we're so looking forward to that.
In a year.
Yeah.
I'm most excited, obviously, for that. I think that's going to be really exciting, obviously, for obvious reasons. But I'm also really excited to continue doing a lot of firsts together. We both moved into our very first apartment together. We bought our first home together. We did a lot of first things, like traveling. So I'm really excited to continue finding what other firsts we're going to have.
I like that.
I know, me too. What I love most about you, I think it's more of a concept thing, but I think when you get married, you assume that you're obviously marrying that one person, so you're going to love that same person, same thing for the rest of your life. But I've realized that that is not true at all, and I get to love so many different versions of Kurt, and I get to see when Kurt is challenged and becomes a new person after he accomplishes that challenge. I get to see you become a father whenever that happens. I get to see who you've become when you started your own business, when you owned a home. Like, there's so many different versions of you that I didn't know when we first got engaged or when we first met, that I've continued to learn throughout the way. So I feel like that is something I love the most, is that I get to fall in love with different parts of you over and over again in different ways, and I find that to be very exciting.
One thing I love most about Kaitlin is that I get to wake up with my best friend every day. You know, it's a slumber party every night, right? But it's because you never know what life's gonna throw at you when it becomes hectic, or if like you have a bad day with the business or like family, friends. Like, it's good to know that you're not going through it alone. Like, I'll always have Kate there by my side, and I always have like a second person there to have a shoulder to lean on, essentially.
Yeah, definitely the supportive quality for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wedding Worthy for more.